Ah yes, shovelware. The best kind of software there is. If you've ever owned any popular console in your childhood, you've probably owned at least one of these types of games. They're usually made by unknown studios, and they're meant to appeal to people who don't really care about the quality of the game and just want something to pass the time at a low price. While rummaging through my DS collection, I happened to stumble upon an old game that my younger sister bought way back when she still played with my DSi. Fashion Designer High Fashion. Information on the game is scarce, to say the least. Searching online yields little to no results, though I managed to discover that it goes by Fashion Designer Junior Week in the US. Published by 505 Games, one of the kings of shovelware for the DS, and developed by Creative Patterns, a now defunct French studio, I discovered that, for some reason, the game's European box art is completely different from its American counterpart, with the latter looking nothing like the actual game. I mean, I shouldn't be surprised when the US trailer looks like... whatever that was. Apparently it's a sequel to another fashion designer game called Style Icon that came out in 2007, while the one that I own is from 2009. There seems to be almost no info about that game as well, and to be frank, I'm not that much into fashion designer lore to try and dig for more. Now, since I don't own a capture card for my DS, in order to record footage for the game without them looking like Bigfoot tapes, I had to emulate it. But since I can't legally obtain the game via piracy, I had no choice but to dump the cartridge myself. Despite how much Nintendo likes to cry about it, it's perfectly legal for you to do so, at least in most countries, since they're pretty much backup copies. Using a little help from some, let's say, specialized tools, I managed to get the file to my laptop and then straight into my PC for me to play it with an emulator. Upon starting the game, I make my profile and... Wait, is that the Discord notification sound? Well, this game was definitely ahead of its time, at least in the sound department. Anyhow, I get sent to a bare-bones looking menu, from which I choose the career option. After that, I get to pick my character. There are very minimal differences between them, and so I decide to pick Liz. And I definitely won't pick Hannah. She looks like she's going to swallow my soul. Mission 1 starts right away and a weird character called The Door begins shouting knock knock at us before we even begin. The owner of the workshop is called Zoe, and she needs new assistants since her old partner, Lucas, left to work somewhere else. The first mission introduces you to the basic mechanics of cutting fabric and folding it, following the pointed arrows. Once the mission is done, we get introduced to Mr. Grey, the antagonist of the game, whom I'll refer to from now on as Grey Man from Team Fortress 2. The third evil brother wants to start a fashion of grey clothes to maximize profit and save on colors. Lucas refuses to work for him and comes back to Zoe's workshop. By the way, the game doesn't have proper voice acting, but the characters sometimes grunt or make other weird noises, and the ones Lucas makes are especially annoying. In Mission 2, we get to iron the clothes as well, until the red squiggly line disappears. We can also make mistakes now, which determine how many times you can do something wrong before you have to start over, and also help with the ranking at the end of the mission. The only time you'll be making mistakes is if you're rushing whatever it is you're doing, otherwise you really have to try in order to actually fail. In fact, the only time I did fail was when I was messing around with the iron and pretty much purposely lost. After the young lad who commissioned us tells us that he shall return, we move on to Mission 3. I'd like to point out here that the game actually has some pretty nice sounding music, considering what type of game it is. Here we're introduced to two other mechanics, the sewing machine and the needle. The needle is hardly any work, but the sewing machine requires the tiniest bit of concentration, since you must follow the circle, especially if you put it at max speed. Having said this, buckle up, because these are the last mechanics the game throws at you. Nothing new is ever added in any future mission, except for gluing, which hardly appears, and it's absolutely zero challenge. And there are 17 other missions before the end of the game. Oh boy, this is going to get real old real fast. In fact, I will barely mention the gameplay from now on, since it truly never changes. After completing the work, we find out that Greyman's plan to defeat his to make fashion grey is succeeding, since we discover that two of our friends started wearing grey only because it's now fashionable. In order to fight this, we swear to make the most creative works possible. And then Lucas says, "Hasta siempre?" Why is there a reference to Che Guevara in a kid's game? But now that we got here, I can't help but mention the weirdest thing about this game. If you had to guess what is the theme that this game's plot revolves around, what would you say? Love? Creativity? Nope, they're wrong. It's warfare. In Mission 4 alone, they mention World War I and then make another reference to the Cuban Revolution. Not only that, but Mission 5 is when we're introduced to the Moths, and their subplot completely revolves around allying with the Woodlice to wage a war against humans for fabric. The general of the Moths even gets called O Generalissimo by the female Moth. Did someone at the dev team work for Activision and forgot this isn't a Call of Duty game? In any case, the story of the Moths actually does impact the game, since from Mission 6 onward you'll get disturbed by their forces while you work. At first you can just swat them away with your hand, but in later levels they get smarter and deploy different forces, like armored vehicles, artillery, which you have to cut with the scissors, infantry socks, and more. Not only that, but after Mission 13, the Woodlice start attacking you as well, and you must iron them out if they get under the fabric, or pop the balloons with your needle if they come from above. If you fail to stop any of the bugs, they will either rip the fabric apart, netting you one mistake, or steal the piece you're working on, making you lose time and start over, although dealing with them is terribly easy most of the time. A good chunk of the next missions are non-consequential filler. They serve mostly to move the plot of the bugs forward, where their constant fails at messing with your work sour the tensions between the two animal armies. Mission 10 has you actually working for Greyman, and he, of course, commissions a grey piece of clothing, but you decide not to listen to him and make it extremely colorful. When you show him your work, he inevitably refuses it and walks away. By Mission 13, Greyman's influence on the fashion world is heavily reduced thanks to your creative work, making him pretty much a non-issue at this point. Nothing of note happens until Mission 19, when Greyman comes to Zoe to admit defeat, since he realized grey clothes aren't selling anymore. He didn't have a change of heart though, he just stopped resorting to cheap money-saving tactics and started doing colored clothes again, since that's what sells now. During this mission, the Moths and Woodlice launch a total attack on your workshop to try and stop your success. Expect constant interference from both sides, since they barely will let you catch your breath. They will deploy every previously used tactic. As per usual though, they're nothing more than an annoyance. Mission 20 is the last mission of the game, where you're commissioned a princess dress for the local royalty. In the meantime, Mozzarella shows how much she learned from humans and persuades the general into breaking the alliance with the Woodlice and helping repel their assault on the workshop. Once the mission starts, in fact, the general shows up dressed in a samurai costume for some reason, and calls upon his Moth army to drive back the attacking Woodlice. You can basically ignore all bugs in this mission, since they'll fight each other while you work. Once you finish the dress, you give it to the princess, and you succeed in revolutionizing the world of fashion forever. I guess. Once you're done with that, the credits roll and the game is over. There are a few more things to check out, like free mode, where you can make what you want, the portfolio, where you can see all the pictures you snapped during the career, and then there are special missions, based on whoever you finish the game with. Special missions, however, are a bit... plain, to say the least. And there you have it. This is all the game has to offer. While the mechanics and general gameplay loop aren't horrible, since the game is more than playable, the fact that you essentially do the same thing over and over again makes the game feel very repetitive and boring. And that's surprising considering that it barely lasts 2.5 hours. Not only that, but having this kind of plot for a game such as this almost makes it feel like a fever dream. At least I hope that the few teenage girls who actually bought this game, all 3 of them, had their fun while playing, and especially while being taught about the hero that is Che Guevara. Hasta la victoria, siempre!